So it's being recorded now, and we want to just go over some stuff. And then if you guys have specific questions, we can do that. It's unfortunate that we don't have the, class on campus anymore. I'm sort of set up that way. You guys are too. So everything that I'm doing now, I'm having to create because it wasn't there before. So let's look at some of the files. Okay. Let's start with this. I'm going to bring up a different school, provided I can get there. Okay. I'm going to have to stop share for a minute and bring up the other school because I have a tiny little 11-inch screen here, and it won't let me go. The little heading at the top covers it, and I can't just go there. Let me see if I can do this now. Almost there. This part I'll be cutting out of the recording, you can imagine. And it is very slow. The internet seems to be pretty slow. All right, so I think we can get to this. All right, let me share this for you. I haven't uploaded it to the site for you guys. I've uploaded it to a different site, but it's what a works cited page looks like, and we want to kind of talk about it, and in that way we can kind of think about how you're going to create your citations and how you're going to create your in-text citations. So let's look at that one. And so here's a kind of a works cited page, an example. Now what you would normally have is up here in the right hand corner, you have a last name and your page number. Excuse me as well. Works cited is centered in the page. It's underlined, it's capitalized. This is not a works consulted or anything else. Works consulted would be where we have looked at different articles, different books. We've maybe done a lot of work. We've done a bibliography. We've done an extreme amount of work. You guys haven't. Bibliography just lists everything, every source you may have read or anything like that. Works consulted would mean that for this particular paper, excuse me, you may have looked at these sources but not necessarily used them. Works cited means you've actually used them in the paper. So that's why this is a works cited. Excuse me, if you look at this, typically you start with the person's last name and then first name. There's a comma between them and then a period. You have two spaces, and then you have the article that they wrote. The article is in quotation marks. It's got a period at the end of it. The period is always inside the quotation marks. And then where was this article found? It was found in the New York Times, which, by the way, is a website. So this is italicized. Back to the idea of why this is italicized and the title is in quotes. So why this is called the idea of containers. And so if you think about the large container is the New York Times. That's the website, or it could be a newspaper. It could be a magazine. It could be a journal. It could be a book. Those are the large containers that have smaller subsections in them. So in this particular website, there are articles as subsections in the large container. The subsections are put in quotes because they're the smaller parts. This is a title, so all the words are capitalized. If you're used to APA, all the words are not capitalized, but MLA, all the words are capitalized. Same way with the website. This is all capitalized. So for the smaller piece, and again, this could be a chapter in a book. This could be a song on a CD. This could be a video on a website. They're all in quotation marks. And the larger thing over there, if this were a video and this were a website, the name of the website would be italicized. So think like that, small quotes, large italics. Um, after the, after the in this case, the website, you have a comma, and then you have the date that it was published. This was the 22nd May 2007. It's written in the sort of European way, so the day comes first, then the month, and then the year. Now, in terms of when you're looking on a website, how do you know this date? The date can be the date it's published, the date it's copyrighted, the date it's revised, um, the date it's updated, or it just has an original date on it with no changes. So it's not necessarily that you're looking for a publication. It's not going to say that. The other thing to check is if you look at the URL, when you actually make it, you copy the URL. If you look at the URL, you've got lots of information here. So you have the NewYorkTimes.com is the name of your website. You have the year, which here it is, 2007-5/22. So we know if we couldn't find it on the page, that's the date. And in this case, we have sections. So it's science, and under science, the earth, but there is no title of the article in it. If we go down to the next citation, you're going to see that in the URL here, the title is actually in there, and also the year, An Inconvenient Truth. So the URLs are very useful in terms of if you can't find information. All right, so you started out with the last name, first name, 2 spaces, title of the article in quotes, in italics, the container, or in this case, the website, the date, the URL, and then there's a period at the end of that. And then when did you access it? This was accessed on the 29th of May, 2019. And what that means is, let's say I take the URL here and I copy it and I put it in my address bar up there, and I click on it and it says, oh, not found. It doesn't mean that there was never an article. It just means that now in April of 2020, it's not up anymore. They've taken it down, which happens quite a bit. So you really want your access date on there so that people can see that, you know, yes, indeed, it was there on the 29th of May in 2019. Or let's say they change the content of the piece, which happens. It's not the same article you looked at. Maybe they changed a lot. Then your access date would say that, well, yeah, but when I looked at it, was then. It wasn't April of 2020. So you need all that information. Let's see if there's anything very different. So that's your typical thing you guys will be doing there. There's an article. This is a review. You won't be looking at reviews, but it's like that. Now this next one, this Gowdy John, this third one down, this one is in a journal. So, and it's a printed journal. It's not an online piece. So we have last name, first name, comma between, period, 2 spaces, the name of the article title, which is quite an article title. The period is inside, and then the quotations, 2 spaces, and then here's your container, which is your magazine in this case, or your journal, all italics, all capitalized. This one happens to be something that they create in volumes. So it's a magazine, and the volumes are usually referencing years, not always. Some publish every week, in which case they would have a number of volumes for a particular year. Some have a volume per year, and if they put this, then if they name it a volume, you're going to have to put that. In this case, it was the first article, or the first, magazine of this volume. So let's say they are the type of journal that publishes spring, summer, fall, and winter. So they publish 4 times. And the first one's number 1, then number 2, number 3, number 4. So in this particular volume, there might be 4, number 1 through 4. Each of these would be a magazine or a journal for that particular period of time. And they're not, so they're typically not numbered consecutively. Each one has its own page numbers. So in this particular printed piece, in this volume, and by the way, what the library does is This is 2007. It's 2020 now. So they will take old journals and they'll bind them. They'll be bound in like a little book. And the book may have one volume. It may have several volumes in it, several years, typically one volume. And then in the volume, they're going to have all these magazines or journals that came out in that year bound together. And then you would, so you, in this case, you would look in the first one, the first magazine, journal number 1, on this page, and you would find the information. Okay, so that's kind of how that goes. This next one's another online piece. This one's interesting only because it has more than one author. In fact, more than 3 authors, 3 or more. So we have the first person's name, comma, last person's name, et al. If it were just two authors, it would be Milliken Michael, and then the other one would be written in regular order like Sam Smith. So it would be Anne Sam Smith. You wouldn't switch them. If you have the et al, we know there's 3 or more people. You're only responsible for putting the first one in that case. This one here has something, excuse me, by the same author. So this Nordhaus person wrote this one, and the Nordhaus person wrote this one, which is why they didn't put his name twice. They just put 3 spaces. So there's all kinds of little rules in here. You won't probably have to worry about any of this for this particular work that you're working on. And this one, this last one down here that we're looking at, Brett Schulte, this one is actually a database. And so if you look at it, it's EBSCOhost. And if you get something from a database, what will happen is on the page itself, there'll be either on the side, it'll say Cite. You'll click on Cite, you'll choose MLA 8th edition, and it'll cite it for you. You'll copy and paste and just put it there. You won't have to actually do this. In the old days, we had to do it, but now you rely on them to do it because these are sometimes more complicated. Very often what they are is something that was in a printed source. You can see this first part of the information is the printed source, and then this is a database, but sometimes it goes to online, and then you would have the printed, you'd have the online, and then you'd have the EBSCOhost part. So it just depends on what it was. So those are some examples. Rules for these kind of things that we are needing. We look at our stuff, which will come up. So if we were looking at this, we would be looking at our, oh, we went to directions. No. Oh, sorry, citations. We want to look at the example here. So this is just a handout that the library gives you based on the most typical things. These are what in-text citations look like. You have more than one by the same author. You see that one here. You typically will have something that looks like this first one, if it's a printed source. If it's not a printed source, you won't have the page number. You'll just have the last name. This one all the way down here has no author listed. Do you see if we go down their ways? No author listed. So when you go to your source or your works cited page, you don't have an author. The first thing in that citation is this, the perfect hand. That's all that's there. Now it's kind of interesting that they have a page number because that means it's a printed source. And normally when there's a printed source, there would be an author. Perhaps this is in a newspaper, again done by the editorial staff, so they don't give them credit for it. But this is a printed source. If it were just an online piece, you wouldn't have the page number. You would just have the article title. Okay. Okay. Here's some examples of works cited for books. I don't know that you'll be doing many books. This is what a website looks like. Um, and again, the website is called, in this case, So Many Books. It doesn't have any articles on it. It is just a website, perhaps with books listed, I'm not sure. But there's no article. It's just the whole thing is about books, and there's no article about it, maybe a list. Article on the website you'll be doing. So here's the last name, first name, all that stuff we went on that we did already. And then, yeah, I don't think you'll be working with videos, probably not tweets, but that's what a tweet looks like. Your databases you'll be working with, but you won't have to worry about this so much. They'll do this for you, whether it be periodical articles or ebooks or chapters, or visual art, anything like that. They'll do it. Email would look like this. A personal interview would look like this. If you don't find something on there, you can just type in to a Google search MLA 8th edition plus citations, and it'll bring up all the rules. Or you can go to Purdue, and Purdue Online, and Purdue will also have that information. I think maybe I'll post that for you on your, in the same file section, so you can find that. Okay, so that's sort of an overview of that stuff. And then, so we looked at what a paraphrase was last time. We know a paraphrase is just putting them in your own words. So aside from that, you must, when you paraphrase, you must cite the source, because this is academic work. So read that again if you're not remembering what that is. Quoting has particular rules. And I think we did this in our last meeting. So if you look at the last video, you can see that. So here are the rules, and basically that periods and commas go inside quotes. So here's a quote. It ends the sentence, so it should be a period at the end of the sentence. We put the period. Okay, now there's two reasons this one needs a period. First of all, if you were to put this inside your sentence, it's a complete sentence inside your sentence, and you're quoting it. So you would have the period here, then you would finish your sentence and put a period on the outside of your sentence, because it is a sentence that you quoted. So you have to maintain the punctuation. Okay. If it's a semicolon, it means you're adding two sentences together. And so this normally has a period here, which would be inside of the quotations, but the rule for semicolon is put it outside. If you put it inside, it's hard to see, so they put it outside. If it's a question, it depends on if the quote that you're using is a question. If the quote you're using is a question, the question mark goes inside. If you're asking the question and the quote happens to be part of your question, the question mark goes on the outside. Okay. Here's one where we have a complete sentence, the next one, number 4, inside. It's a quoted thing that you place inside of your own sentence. So if you notice, you have what's called an attributive tag, the lead-in, with the complete sentence, the period, and then you continue on with your sentence. Okay. And then this thing is asking, and it's just a reminder, should I tell the reader where the quote came from? Yes, you need to do that. And so this is a practice thing. So this is a quote. There's the quote. He argues, attributive tag, or the lead out if you want. And somebody put the source. So normally there would be a period at the end of argues, but because you're putting in that information, that becomes part of the sentence. So the period's on the outside of that. This happened to be in a book, last name and a page number. In this case, the author is used in your sentence itself, so you only need the page number. Okay. Those are quotes. And then here's an internet source, and it turns out that there was no author. So you would start with the article title. There is no author. That's what you start with. So you put this in here. So on your works cited page, there was no author. You don't save a space. You just type in Titan TriMet, and then you put probably the website and the other information. So what you put in terms of your in-text citation, which is a reference to the works cited page, is whatever's first in that citation. In this case, because we don't have an author, it's this article. Okay. All right, so we kind of went over all that stuff. And we also did some practice, this stuff. So these are the rules, again, in detail, what goes where. For instance, there's never a comma or a P between the author's name and page number in a in-text citation. Parenthetical citation always comes after the in quotation mark. Now, that's in a sentence, but what happens is, then you remove the end quotation mark and the ending parentheses is not in the quotation, but it's in the sentence. So you have to put a period after the parentheses. This is complicated the way they put it, but that's all that means. Okay. And then I think we practiced these exercises. So I'm not going to make you do this first one, but let's just say we looked at it. We can see that there's a quote inside of a sentence here. So normally you would put a period inside the quotation mark and you end the sentence. But now you want to say where it came from. You want to cite the source. So you have an in-text citation. And what happens is, because now you've included this in the sentence, you've moved the period over here and get rid of this period. You're going to cut that period. Okay, so that settles that, but then on the inside of the in-text citation parentheses, you see they left something, that this old-fashioned stuff that we don't do anymore. So you take the comma out and you take the P out, and it would just be Roszak 287. Okay. In this third one, we have the author. We have a paraphrase, but we have to show where it came from, so we would put 287. Okay, so this is something you can practice. Does anybody want to practice this? Or are you guys good on this? You guys all good on this? Jasmine, are you good with that stuff? Jasmine, are you there? Yeah, she's here. She probably can't. Oh, yeah, she may not be able to. She says I'm good on this. Okay, so she can't use her she's muted. Is everybody else understanding? Do you need to practice?
Yeah, I've got a handle on it.
Okay. So, I mean, look, if Tanel has a handle on it, shoot, everybody's got a handle on it.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Of course. All right, so we're going to pretend like that's good. Let me share some other stuff here that I just want to point out to you. So we're going to go away from, at least I think we're going to go away from that. We've covered all this other stuff in various videos, so I don't think you need any of that. So we're not going to do that. But what I want to point out to you guys is, let's go here. And this third one down now in terms of a folder has peer ideas, because some people were asking me, well, I'm looking at articles and I'm confused. I'm not sure what I'm doing. So I've added into this the peer ideas. Now these little links right here sometimes go to one article and sometimes go to more than one article. So if we clicked on the green spaces, which by the way is an idea, so I'm not telling you that I'm giving you all the information you need to write about this. I'm just saying, hey, this guy had this idea, he found this article, and it turned out that this is a good idea. Green spaces, but in this case it's about parks, but we could just talk about green spaces. And it's got some reasons for doing this. Cooling the urban, the city's hot. So that would be something to help with climate change. It minimizes flooding, improves water quality, it cleans the air. It does a lot of stuff that you wouldn't think that much. And so this is good information here. And then on this particular page, they have resources. So you can check these sources out. Here's a link that you could just cut and paste and look that up. It's about smart parks. And here's another one, the Trust for Public Lands Climate Smart Cities. So you could look at that. Here, let me see what's going on. Okay, somebody left. Sometime, can you guys hear me still?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I know. She probably, okay, there, she's back. All right. Um, Back to this stuff. All right, so there's one article, and it seems like a pretty simple article, but it's an idea that maybe if you looked it up, might turn out to be one of the ones you like. This is another one, climate education, using education to make people understand that this is something serious. Most people think this is one of the more important ones because if you can't motivate people to make a change in their personal lives, or accept that the idea is you're going to have to limit some of the things you're used to doing. Perhaps you can't get in your car and drive everywhere you want to go. We have to figure out ways of moving around that don't create so much greenhouse gas, especially in California. We're, we have that kind of restriction on cars that the federal government's trying to lift, where we're expecting more gas mileage and less pollution as time goes on. The federal government sort of sued, I guess, California, so that we go with whatever standards they have, which are no standards, which means that California would look very much like Los Angeles did in the 70s, where the smog was hard to see through, it was hard to breathe, people were getting sick. It's kind of a disgusting place to live. So, and that's all to benefit oil. That's nothing to do with our health. So, there's some things we need to continue to resist, but we need to know why to resist. And so, educating the public is big. Now this article has lots of really detailed information, and some things to look at that they start right out with, case studies and things like that. And the basic reasons, and then they kind of go through a lot of stuff, projecting future disasters. If you look at this, based on the climate change, we don't do a lot in terms of disasters, it's going to go way up. Look at this. These are the deaths they're going to go way up from disasters. And so this was before us, we're 2020, and so we've already gone up, not too much, but by 2040 we've gone up significantly. And then you guys are fairly young, so I would expect that you'd live for sure to 2080, and that would be not a pretty place to be around that time. So they're sort of trying to explain it to you that this thing is accelerating really fast, and what that means is there's going to be all kinds of things happening to your environment that are going to make it pretty unpleasant. Things like bugs. Bugs are going to overwhelm us. This will be like a country in Africa where there's all kinds of bugs we can't control. We're getting some things from places we've never had them before. There was a particular fish in China that we now have that eats all of our fish. And it's basically a cross between a fish and a snake. Very difficult to find and control, and it reproduces like crazy. So this could ruin our whole fishing industry, which means then we wouldn't have fish. How great would that be? There are bugs that came from China also that will cover a tree and eat the whole thing. The whole thing's gone, and they go in like locusts. They come like locusts. They cover, the sky is dark. We're starting to have those, and we haven't figured out how to kill them or, prevent it. So things are coming, kind of biblical things. It's pretty scary. So this might be something you want to look at. We need to motivate people. Now you need to take two ideas because you're going to be talking about, well, this idea says, if we do this, then the result of this is going to be this. The impact is going to be to this degree in terms of changing climate, reducing, mitigating climate change. And it'll cost this much money, or it takes so many years to do it. This can be done quickly. This is much slower. So when you evaluate which idea you think is better or more effective, you're going to be setting up your criteria. Do we need to do it right away? Is that more important? Or is something that's going to produce significant results in 5 to 10 years, is that more important to put our money and time into? Can we do both? And maybe you'll argue that. Here's another one, eliminate use of coal. That's just a small article, but it's a good idea. This lowering the greenhouse gases is just one page, and it got some ideas in it. Protecting the rainforest was always important because of the amount of oxygen we get from it, but it's being destroyed so fast. I'm not sure what we're going to do with that. We'd have to actually go in maybe with military and stop those governments from destroying the rainforest, but it explains why they're doing it. And let me tell you, it's really because of us, our greed. We like meat. So it's clearing the rainforest so they can raise cattle and sell us the meat, because they can make a lot of money doing that. So they're going to kill us to satisfy our, our appetite. So another thing that we could be working on up here is changing our diet, lowering the amount of red meat because of the cost to the environment. Let's say you decided to do education, and maybe you were interested in supercharging plants because it's a kind of cool idea. And so you look at this, this introduces you to what it might do. It's a good article. And then, so you might use this to sort of start out with, you're doing, might be enough information. You guys are responsible for at least 6 sources. So 2 can come from this, from us, from the website, from the class. And then you need to get some more. So these are sort of, starts with question and answers. And then it gives information. This is another article. Notice there's a website at the bottom, so you can look for that. There's a date here. You can look for all that stuff. So these are just really good ideas. So you've got a bunch of good ideas you can kind of use if you're not thinking of something. And again, if you go to Google and you like type in things, what's not on here is biofuels. I'm interested in that. Because maybe we can use, instead of throwing away some of the byproducts of existing food or restaurants, you can use it to power our cars, and that way it will be a net zero effect, which means that we wouldn't have burned any oil. We would simply taking care of something we'd already been using. That would be a net effect. So lower the greenhouse gases that way. That's a fairly controversial thing. So, but still, that might be something you came up with that's not on this list. There might be something else you came up with. But we need 2 ideas that you're going to explain to the reader. And then you're going to be providing information on both sides, and then you're going to decide which one is maybe the best idea. You're going to make that argument. Or you're going to decide there are more ideas. You also have a counter argument that you're responsible for. And so in that way, you may decide, hey, you know what, I didn't do very much with this other one, I just checked it out. But it would be simple, for instance, with jet fuel, to ask the airlines to lower their speed. That's all they have to do, and they use quite a bit less jet fuel, which would be significant in terms of lowering the greenhouse gas effect. And that would be just a rule. You can only go this speed. You have to go slower. Not so much slower, but a lot of times you'll get to a destination an hour before or half an hour before. So if they went at a steady speed, they wouldn't burn as much fuel. Which in the long run would help us. That might be another good idea. It would cost us nothing really to do. It's just the changing of a rule. So that would be a good counter argument, because maybe what you're thinking of is supercharging plants is going to have a lot of high development costs. So these are ideas. Now I also put on this piece somewhere, let's see, an argument format, which I have to fix. It's not correct. It's the old one. But right in that area, there will be an argument paper format telling you what you're supposed to do in an introduction, kind of like we did with rhetorical analysis, but in more detail, because what I'm needing you guys to do in this last paper for sure is follow a format um, that's a that demonstrates a skill in writing a paragraph, which is sort of basic stuff, but I need transition, I need topic sentences, I need stuff like that. So that when you move on to the next class, these aren't things that the teacher is going to be, taking points off, because it's not really a 115 topic. It's more of a high school thing, but we're going to do it. And then when you get to the 120, when you get to the 124 class, whether you take it at Grossmont or you take it wherever you're going, um, you'll represent yourself well. You'll have the skills to make that an easy transition. Okay, so I'm gonna fix this up and repost that for you. And then you have other stuff on here aside from these directions. You've got this. These other two sort of explain to you, theoretically how to do it. The research, this piece, I put some articles on there, which you may find interesting. This one in California is kind of interesting, which maybe you'll talk about. But this is talking about our new normal. More intense heat, more fires, more droughts, and more floods. And now we've finally started it. If you notice, we have pretty good water this spring. But what's been projected in the news very recently is that we're entering a extreme drought that we haven't seen in, say, 1,000 years, a long time. And they can tell this by taking soil samples, and they can tell this by checking the rings and trees that we haven't had anything like they project we're going to have. It's not going to just be for a year. We're going into a cycle. Cycles can be, 10 years, 5 years, 100 years, a long time. Typical weather in California has never been so temperate. It's always been pretty extreme, and this has mostly been a desert. So this is interesting to see, just in terms of what's actually going on, if you're not convinced that climate change is a real thing. So there's some articles in here that you might be working with. And then we looked already at the peer examples. The citation information is there on this one. If you can't remember how to get into the library, then click on that document, that first document, and it gives you some background on the library, but also these were two short videos prepared by the Grossmont Library, and this one tells you how to get on, how to do it from home, how to do a basic search. This one's doing a more sophisticated search. So you've got lots of information there that I think will be useful to you once you are actually into the research. Any questions, you guys? So Timel, what are you concerned about with the argument paper? Anything?
At the moment, no. You've
No.
put a lot of information out that I can
Check out.
reference if I have any questions. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of information you put out.
Okay, and I will fix that argument format, and then when you guys actually, is anybody starting the paper that's on right now? Morgan, are you starting it right now? Oh yeah, you can't. Oh, Jasmine says, how long does it have to be the paper? The paper is 12 to 1,500 words. So I don't know, how many pages is that? Figure 250 to 300 words a page. Is that about right? Say it's 250. So that's maybe 6 pages, something like that. 5 or 6 pages. Yeah. Something like that. Okay. All right. So this is kind of an introduction to it. If you have questions, email me, And as you're doing it, if you think of questions and you're in the process of, I don't really care what paper, some paper, um, in the next Zoom thing, which is actually on Wednesday, you can ask those questions. You know, make sure you post your papers so I can get those back to you. If there's any revisions, we definitely want to get the revisions all done, so you're not like worried about that. Okay. All right, so I'm kind of finished my part of this meeting. How many sources? 6 sources. You used to have 6 sources. So you could have 2 from the site that we were looking at, 2 that I've actually posted up here, and then I need at least 1 database source, and so altogether you need 6 sources. Now that doesn't mean that everybody's just going to have 6. Some people may have more, because you may have articles you don't take much out of. You know, oh, this was a good point, I just want it for that. In which case, you know, you might have 8 or 9. Yeah, it could happen. Because, you know, really what you need is something substantive so you can write your paper, because it's research, not really coming out of your head. Okay, but look, you've got weeks to do it. I just don't procrastinate and you'll be fine. You know, the due date for this thing, I think, is
I think you had it as the 28th or 29th for the rough draft.
for the rough draft, right? And we'll see how that goes, which would be great. And then the 11th is the final draft. And the reason I want that is because if anybody has to do a revision, that gives them about another week to fix it. And so if we don't have a final, then that's great, because then you guys can, you know, fix it up if you need to. Yeah, get everything done. Any other questions? Okay. Tamel, question?
No, I think I'm good for now. Like I said, you have a lot of information out on the Canvas site, so if I have anything, I'll check that first, and if I can't find an answer, I'll email you.
Yeah, I mean, that should be overwhelming. So
Yeah, there's a lot. I gotta check more through it.
there's a lot. So, but you can still ask me and I can kind of point out where it is. And so maybe next time in class, if you couldn't figure something out, I'll just point it out, you know? Okay. All right, guys. So I'm done. If you have questions, I can be on another 5-10 minutes. If not, um, you know, just say goodbye. Sayonara. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you, Professor. You too. You have a good one.
Take care. Have a good day, guys.